Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always in these spooky, haunted after midnight locales is Tim.
Hey, big brother.
Hey, little brother. Wait a minute, you're older than I am. Why am I the little brother? So, yes, even though I said it was after midnight, it's actually, there's this clearly daylight for both of us, but that's neither here nor there. This is a horror movie podcast. We talk about horror films every week, sometimes more than once per week, and we are discussing The Pale Door on this episode, which is a new Western horror film, which went to VOD. And we're going to dive into this. It was a winner of a vote, a new vote that we have on Patreon at the $10 tier, where new VOD releases and stuff of that nature go up for a vote. And the one with the most points each month gets reviewed, as this is right now. The one with the lowest points gets removed, but all the other stuff that was in the middle of the pack gets rolled over into the vote. So the vote keeps getting bigger and bigger, and that's something that the $10 patrons get to do. When we have quieter months, maybe after Christmas, we'll maybe do two of the most voted for, and so on. But it's just a way to help pick kind of what some of these newer, smaller releases that we're doing on the show. And theoretically, that'll give us more time for other classics and stuff like that. But, so this is The Pale Door. It's a horror western focused on two brothers, if Tim's joke at the start wasn't an indication of that. We will start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning in the middle before we go to spoilers. The premise is that these two brothers grew up without parents after they were shot dead when they were both relatively young. The older brother was maybe in his like mid to early teens. The younger brother, more like an 8-year-old, something like that. And we get a flashback at the start of the movie, but ultimately we're thrust into a situation where the older brother is sort of the leader of a gang, and very likable gang, but a gang all the same. And they're going to do a heist on a train. But instead of finding a vault or gold or something of that nature, they find a crate, which inside the crate is a girl who has like a Hannibal Lecter style metal contraption on her face, like a mask to like stop her from biting, presumably. And they think this is weird. Like, why is she trapped like this? And ultimately, they decide to take her back to where she belongs for a reward money, rather than get involved in human trafficking. So they're not completely evil. And unfortunately for them, though, when she takes them back to her hometown, the brothel where she came from, let's just say all the women there aren't exactly what they seem. There is a supernatural, what some might say, witch-like force at play, and they find themselves trapped in the town. And I'll leave it there for now, but we'll get into more plot details later on, spoilers. So I will start, as I always do, with asking Timothy Goatman Esquire what he thinks of The Pale Door.
So I was kind of excited by this because I thought the trailer looked pretty decent. Like, maybe not amazing, but I think when we talked about the trailer on the news episode of the show, it's kind of like, this could be cool. It looks kind of cool. Unfortunately, I gotta admit, I was pretty disappointed. I think this was super boring. I think there's like the horror element. I mean, it's definitely there, but it is like really not not like a huge part of the movie, at least like what I thought, because I thought it was going to be more of a siege movie where they're all like trapped inside this brothel, like fighting off like demons and stuff, and there is definitely elements there, and some of it's kind of cool, but then so much of it is this drama stuff between these brothers that I'm sorry, I just could not care less about. I don't think any of the like characters or actors are particularly great. I think a lot of the special effects are pretty bad, like a lot of CGI blood. I hate to be negative, but I'm sorry, I just really wasn't into it.
Interesting. Now, you probably think I'm about to try and be contradictory here, say that it was great. I loved it. It was this amazing movie, and Tim is a fool, and I'm about to school him over the next 40 minutes or so as to why he is incorrect. That's not the case. I thought it was just okay. I don't feel as harshly negative as you do, which is why I'm a little surprised with
I mean, like
the extremes there, but
I mean, I don't think it's like the worst movie in the world by far. Like, it's not like, oh my god, I can't believe they put this crap out. You know, I just really didn't like it.
um, it kind of falls into a category for me where I like it a lot more than say, like all the supernatural VOD movies that we cover that I sit and say I hate and think are boring. I think it's better than those, mainly because I think it does a decent enough job at making the gang of characters likable enough. They seem, you know, friendly, couple likable faces. As it goes on, the kind of the assholey one, you know, ends up being a little bit nicer by the end, and just there's enough sort of just basic building blocks there for the characters that you know it's fine. It's fine in terms of that side of things.
And they didn't really do anything for me. I thought they were all kind of like boring. Like there wasn't really much that stood out to me by him. And like the main character, the kind of younger brother guy, I don't know. I didn't think his acting was that great. No offense to him.
He might be the weaker. No offense to you. You're terrible. You're terrible. You should stop acting immediately. But no offense. Yeah, he's probably the weaker element. I don't think the cast was too bad though. They were kind of very serviceable in a like. This to me felt like if they just not let the pacing die as much as they did, especially after a certain point in the movie, because it's kind of a big moment with the supernatural stuff, where the horror stuff kind of really kicks in, and there's a lot of stuff going on there, and then afterwards it kind of slows down to a crawl for a while, and I think at that point it should have been a bit more defined what they were doing and you know what their thoughts were, their plan was. There's a lot of kind of sitting around waiting for things to happen after that point, which I think really hurts its momentum. Because I was, you know, I thought the setup was solid enough. I was kind of into the idea of the characters. I was into the idea of kind of what the premise is. It needed to be a bit more old school 80s B movie, I think, past a certain point.
Exactly,
and, instead of doing that, it kind of slowed down and tried to make it more of a serious thing about forgiveness and whatnot. And I'll always champion, trying to go above and beyond and doing other things that aren't just typical. But it just, yeah. But I thought it was okay. Like I wouldn't say it was bad. I think this is kind of landed in the middle for me. It's got more. I could see more effort put into this and more attempts at the writing of the characters than I do with, I don't know, pick your. What did we do? You should have left. I don't know. Pick your supernatural movie that we did recently. I don't know. Any of those.
Standard parents haunted house, child starts acting weird, Hollywood supernatural movie.
Any of those we've done.
Prodigy, much. The Turning.
Oh, you're hurting me. All of these are hurting, Tim. Like daggers to the heart. But
yeah, I mean, I'll agree that it does have more than like a lot of those kind of typical like just generic Hollywood horror movies. Like I'll give it that. Like at least there is an attempt to try to be more, and there's nothing necessarily wrong for like trying to add like drama and character relationships and everything to the movie. Like if it's done effectively, like that can really set something like really high. But it just unfortunately it wasn't really there for me. It wasn't really hitting what I was hoping for. And I mean, I think maybe part of it might have been like from the trailer I was expecting a bit more, like you said, like an 80s B movie, like something like along the lines of like not the 80s, but like From Dusk Till Dawn or something. Like that's what I was kind of thinking that we might be getting. So part of it might have been like expectations that kind of soured me on it a little bit. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's unfortunate because again I was looking forward to this, kind of hoping because I do actually like the Western horror. I think that's like a cool mix that you don't really see like too often.
Bone Tomahawk's kind of the one big example from the past few years.
Like every now and again you get one, but it's not like something we really have like a glut of. But I don't know, it's a shame.
I mean, you mentioned the horror and the gore stuff not really being, or the effects I should say, rather than gore, although there are some gory moments, but
there was a few cool scenes, but overall I didn't think it was that great.
Yeah, I kind of like some of the visuals. There's definitely like I mean, I don't think it's I mentioned witch like stuff. You know, when you actually see some proper witches stuff going on. Like I thought some of that looked good, some of it didn't look good. I kind of appreciated kind of the horrific, like, you know, take on the pointy noses and the your traditional witch kind of thing. It was like, okay, it's great to have this ethereal kind of like. Obviously, I love the witch and I like those takes and that kind of thing. Or your more artistic attempt, and not that Hansel and Gretel's got a witch per se, but you know, Gretel and Hansel, like, you know, I thought I like those takes on it. But there is something to be said about having just a grisly, gnarly version of the classic pointy nose, you know, cackling.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of like making them like, yeah, like creatures where it is. You know, it almost becomes like a zombie movie or something where like you're just kind of, you know, fighting off tons of them and they're trying to break into this, you know, place and stuff. Like I think that is a cool idea, but again, I feel like we don't really ultimately end up getting that much of that.
No, well, that's the thing. Once stuff is kind of revealed and stuff set up, it does kind of linger with them waiting around rather than being particularly proactive. I would have definitely preferred something that maybe establishes some rules a little bit earlier on and kind of has them operate through trying to survive based on what they've learned and what that. But they're so kind of in the dark and things seems, you know, eventually they kind of realize they can't enter a certain place and that's kind of okay. Like I definitely like details like that, but it ultimately never feels like there's much. I have this fine line with a lot of movies, horror movies specifically, where I don't have a problem with a movie where the characters, and this is not to say that this is what happens in this movie, just that I was thinking about it at a certain point during the film, but I have this problem sometimes where when I'm in a movie where it's obvious that the characters have no hope of surviving, where, you know, it doesn't matter what they do, like the force that's after them, usually it's supernatural.
The force.
Shut up. Is so, you know, powerful. It can just do anything random. It can, you know, retaliate to anything they do. Or in something like, say, a Blair Witch, where they just can never leave. There's no getting out of it. Now, Blair Witch actually is an example where it's done well, where there's this sort of building sense of dread of accepting that there is no hope, that there is no escape. Right?
You talking about the original Blair Witch or the
original? Of course, the original.
Okay. All right, just making sure. Jeez.
I'm not going to bring up that new one as a positive example for anything. How dare you? Right, but there's a lot of movies where, you know, whether it's, you know, vampires, werewolves, witches, zombies, whatever.
Frankensteins.
There's a lot of movies where, but I think more often than any of those, it's usually ghosts or demons or something supernatural that can just kind of do whatever it wants because there's less rules for it. There's a problem I have in a lot of movies where it feels like there's no hope for any of the characters to survive. So there's actually almost no reason for them to be proactive, and there's a wall I kind of hit sometimes where I'm like, well, nothing they do matters, so I have a hard time caring about anything they do, and like I say, there's a fine line. There's a line where it works, where the hopelessness is what the movie's going for, and it wants you to feel that existential dread of there's no happy ending here. But in a movie like this, where it's more, like you say, kind of verging on a siege, where they're kind of trying to survive and hoping to find a way out, where if there's a point where I'm thinking, well, nothing they do really matters, like anything could happen to them at any point, and without getting into spoilers, there's one character who starts like doing stuff because they're clearly being affected by the witches elsewhere in the town, and it's like, well, if they can just make people do things, and at that point there's like, you know, there's very little chance of surviving, and it almost makes any character who does survive in a situation where it feels that helpless feel like it could be a cheat, or feel like it's just kind of random that they survive, and you know, it's something that I think about sometimes when I'm watching movies where there's characters in peril in a situation, kind of like this, but you know, more so much with ghosts and demons and things like that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that. At a certain point in this movie where I was going, well, is there any actual realistic sense of survival? And it's mainly due to the town. The town they're in's kind of got like a, you know, otherworldly. It's not really here, but so they can't really get out kind of vibe. So if they can't get out, then, you know, and I don't know. There's this feeling of like, well, there's nothing they can really do. So I'm kind of not invested in what the decisions are. But part of why I love characters being proactive and I love rules is because if there's rules, that they can use those rules to make choices based on the world they're in, based on what they're doing, and therefore I'm invested because whether or not they succeed or not, there's a chance they can succeed, and if there's a chance they can succeed, there's something for me to bite onto. There's something for me to hope they'll succeed in, to hope they'll accomplish. And if that's not there, unless it's a very specific, like I say, fine line, unless it's a very specific like take on it where the dread works on its own, or you've got some sort of existential kind of, I don't know, David Lynch or Lovecrafted or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of where it falters for me.
Yeah. No, it's a good. Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like I get what you're saying. There's like you want to have like some type of spark or something that you can root for or see them overcome, and not to necessarily say like that there can't be a movie where it is just like people getting slaughtered without any hope of like survival, but like that can be done. But I think like you do want to have like something that you can kind of grasp on or hope for, or at least some sense of like, okay, let's see him maybe start to do this or find a way out here or there, or whatever.
And a movie like this, it's kind of, it goes back to the example of like, most movies have a 3-act structure, and they'll be like set up the story, and then the third act will be the resolution of the story, and most movies are 3-act structure, and most movies should stick to being a 3-act structure. But again, other movies break that rule. Movies have 4-act structures, 5-act structures, weird 2-act structures, and all sorts of wackiness. And movie rules are always made to be broken by people who understand why they exist in the first place and what they're doing when they break them. But I'm not so sure that this VOD movie about a gang of outlaws in the Wild West taking on witches is necessarily the movie to do that. It feels weird to say, if you're not an auteur, then maybe don't try it. But it's kind of just that weird thing where you're watching this and you're trying to punch above your weight a little bit. And I don't know if this is necessarily. I'm kind of using this in a more broad example kind of way. But you try to punch above your weight a little bit, and it doesn't work. It ends up being more alienating than it does adding anything to the movie. But yeah, sadly, the main character is actually maybe one of the least likable in some ways, which I'll get into in spoilers. I can't really say why before then. You stop being distracted by your cat, Tim. This is really unprofessional.
What if I don't? He's just gonna walk over the keyboard, and then we'll probably stop recording like last week.
Stop. They didn't know about that. They didn't have to know about this. Stop revealing things. This is a smooth operation. There's never a fault as far as the audience are concerned.
Sure.
Concerned. Do you have any other spoiler-free thoughts before we move on?
Not really. I mean, again, for me, this does kind of fall in like, there's definitely stuff to talk about, but I mean, a lot of the things I didn't like about the movie just kind of boils down to it being really dull for me, which I mean, unfortunately, is kind of like one of the least interesting things to talk about in a movie, Well,
but I'm going to prod you. I'm going to challenge you then. Why is it dull? What about it do you think makes it dull?
Well, I mean, I was just bored throughout the whole time. I didn't really care about any of the characters. Didn't really care that much about what happened to them. There just really wasn't anything in it that held my interest.
Okay. So characters weren't engaging to you. Didn't care about what was happening to them. Which is anything else you'd say maybe contributes to your lack of caring? Like, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, and I hate to criticize this because, like a lot of these VOD movies, I'm assuming they probably don't have a huge budget, but it wasn't anything like stylistically that looked that great. It doesn't look like bad or anything, but there's nothing like, there's not like any particularly great like cinematography or cool directorial little flourishes or anything that really snapped out at me.
No, that's fair. I don't like it's badly directed. It's kind of
sure.
It falls into perfectly serviceable kind of territory where nothing really sticks out, but nothing sticks out in a bad way either. So give the credit where credit's due. Nothing sticks out in a bad way. So
yeah. To be fair, it's like not like a lot of this stuff is if it was a movie that maybe had my attention more, then it wouldn't even be something that like you really think about or is worth complaining. But then, yeah, if it's a movie that you're not into, then it's like, just like another thing. You're like, oh yeah, and then this and this and blah blah blah.
Yeah. The director did a segment or two on Scare Package, and the only full-length movie before this was Camera Obscura, which I have not heard of. Sounds like a horror movie though, from
Sure.
the title.
I think isn't that a band? I think.
I don't
Pretty
know.
sure it's a band.
I don't know. It's also a movie, apparently. Which one for me? I'm an expert.
Okay.
R&B Koontz, the director of the film.
Oh yeah, I forgot this is a Koontz production. Wonder if he's related to the great Dean Koontz, horror icon.
Maybe. I don't know. The biographies on. There's not even got a biography on IMDb, so it would take further research that I'm not willing to spend time on at this juncture in my life and in this show's history. But maybe one day the time will come.
Sure, maybe one day.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get the spoilers in so we can talk about stuff. So I will take this time now to thank our Patreon producers for the month of September, which I hope is when this episode also goes up, but we'll see. So it has to though, because it's the October third, and this has to go out before the October third. But anyway, thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Boardnow, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, and Brett Williams. They are our Patreon producers for the month. That means they are $20 or more on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, but you can support us over there for as little as $1 per month, and that $1 will get you an extra episode of Screams After Midnight every single month. There's a back catalogue now of about 20 or so movies. We do extra bonuses as well in October. We usually do 4 in October, so that's coming obviously right around the corner. So you can go enjoy that back catalogue. At the $5 tier, you get to vote in an episode once per month. You get early access to all the review episodes by one day. And as I mentioned at the start of this review, the $10 tier has the Echoes by Morning vote, which is, I forgot the title there for a second. But that's where we have all these new VOD movies in, and we help the patrons help us select which ones we're going to do on the show. And they picked The Pale Door, which apparently Tim's very upset about, and is going to give them all a stern talking to on Patreon later.
I mean, I've said this before, but I don't. Not a fan of our patrons. They need to get their act together.
Maybe a meanly worded post is okay. Listen up, patrons.
Yeah,
we've had enough of this shit.
It's like you couldn't have picked a Leprechaun movie or something.
It wasn't that open a vote. I mean,
there's a write-in option.
No, there's not. Shut up.
Well, it should be.
To be fair, the thing with this vote is that people could go and like watch trailers and read the synopsis. I'm pretty sure that everyone who voted on this vote though looked at the posters and said that poster looks the coolest and picked that.
Yeah.
And to be fair, this did have the nicest poster, I think, of the 5 options that were in the vote.
The poster is cool. Yeah, it has like some type of like a steer skull or something on it.
Yeah, we see the mask in the movie as well, but yeah, it's like a person like a the skull mask kind of thing, but it's like it's a good poster. It's a good poster.
Yeah. Scary poster.
And for the record, if anyone was curious, the film that was eliminated and will not be in the vote going forward is Clownface. Our patrons did not vote for Clownface at any kind of great mass. Had the smallest amount of points. So,
jeez, you'd think with the America's love of all the Jokers out there that that people would want more clown content, but I guess not.
Yeah. Maybe they're just sick of the president being a clown, so they thought, nah, we don't want more clowns.
What a hot take! I can't believe you're getting political.
This is not politics. This is do-it-yourself at home psychology is what this is. I don't need a doctorate in therapeutic medicine to prescribe.
And I do just want to
here
mention real quick,
yes.
Just in case anyone is taking me too seriously. Obviously, I'm joking. I love all our patrons except one. There's one that I don't like, but I'm not gonna mention by name. But they can figure that out.
I thought you were going to use that there a sort of side tangent into a plug for President Werewolf based on the president jokes. But fair enough. Yes. Too much to clarify. I didn't hate you. Well,
No.
all but one.
All but one.
All but one. Yes. I hate about 5 of them. I'm not going to tell you which 5 though. They know who they are.
I just think it's funny. I hope they're all on a Discord or something now, trying to figure out who it is. Like, well, you didn't like Leprechaun. Like, well, you didn't like the boy, so it must be you. Like, oh. See, who's who?
Yes, a real who's who of who do Peter and Tim hate out of all of our loyal fans? Okay, so full spoilers then for the Pale Door. So the movie opens with the flashback of the 2 kids having to hide whilst like gunmen come and kill their parents, and it's a well enough done sequence. I thought there was going to be more brought up about the mother though, because there's like a weird moment where they're running through the house and they're sneaking around, and the mother's kind of standing there, all like to the point where I thought the mother was going to end up tying into the evil stuff from later. I thought she was going to end up being like a member of like the Coven or something like that.
Yeah.
Although, it is worth mentioning where we keep calling them witches, and they are witches. In this like sort of like almost Silent Hill-esque like afterlife town that they're all in. But the flashback we get the main witch Maria. She was just falsely accused of being a witch. Like she wasn't actually a witch in real life. She became like a witch in the afterlife. I guess it was out of vengeance. The movie doesn't really get into the specifics of this too much. It just kind of shows us the flashback, and then but there was nothing actually telling me she was a witch in real life. It was just kind of
that was my take that she was like burned at the stake or whatever as an innocent person. Yeah.
So I got the impression that all of the witches at this like fake brothel were all falsely accused women who were burned at the stake. And this is kind of their vengeance. I don't know if it ever honestly clearly defines why they need an innocent soul, because that's what they want. They want Jacob because they find out Jacob's never killed anyone.
Yeah,
and they want him because he's innocent and he's pure. I don't know if they ever actually clearly define why.
I thought it was something like they, I don't know, like I thought it had something to do with like they were like feeding off his innocence or whatever, or like it was like something like I don't know, that would help him continue to, I guess, live, or whatever this kind of version of living is. I don't know. It seemed like something like that to me.
Yeah, I guess. That was a little bit strange to me. I never really felt that was well defined. But yeah. So we get an introduction to the team. Like I say, I thought they were relatively likable when they show up in the bar, and the little brother's not in the gang, but he basically volunteers when one of their members gets killed in a standoff with a bounty hunter. I kind of enjoyed the leader, Duncan, the older brother. He's got like a $5,000 bounty on his head, but I kind of like the bickering with the others, where one of them's like, only 1,000. I'm worth at least double that.
Yeah. Yeah, this kind of opening scene wasn't too bad. When like they're in the bar, and then even the kind of the train heist after that, I'd say for most of that part I was still into it. It was honestly, it was kind of like after like all the train stuff where it felt like it really started to slow down for me, even though that's where
the horror started kicking in.
Yeah.
Sure. I get it. And they have this whole guilt thing. He has like almost like a Spider-Man Uncle Ben thing where he hesitates to shoot a woman who runs from the train, thinking she's scared, and Jacob's never shot anyone, so he's like just run, just go, and never come back. But she comes back later and fires at them and ends up hitting his brother. So Duncan being shot and needing medical attention is kind of the main reason to trust Pearl, the girl who was in the Hannibal mask in the chest. Like, hey, I'll take you to my town and they'll give you a reward and we can patch up your friend. So they go with her, and they end up in like one little hut, and there's nothing nearby. But it's not until she actually shows them the way that they can get there, which again kind of ties into this. It's like a mystical place that you can't just enter. It's like Silent Hill or the island from Lost. You can't just stumble into it.
I did like that kind of like weirdness to it, where like they go out and like all of a sudden there's this brothel and they're like, hey, wait a minute, this wasn't here before. Like I do like that kind of strangeness about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was still pretty much on board at this point. I think, you know, because there's a moment as well when she says, "Oh, I'll take you to the brothel." One of the guys is like, "Did she say brothel?" Like all of a sudden, they don't care about the friend dying. They're like, "Hey, we're going to a brothel. This is excellent news." And they go in and like they take the brother Duncan, and there's a lot of stuff sort of in the way here and like just before where the younger brother Jacob like gives him like this you know what do you call it, the not a handkerchief not a handkerchief, what do you call the thing,
towel, I don't know.
it's not a towel.
I forget. I don't know.
How do neither of us know the word for the stupid thing cowboys wear around their necks?
Bandana, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like a bandana, but did they call it a bandana? They don't really wear like a bandana. Anyway, but he gives him it's just this thing because he gave it to his little brother, you know, when they were younger. It's like, hey, this will protect you. This is, you know, big brother magic, and he's trying to give him it back. So there's a lot of like emotional him concerned about his brother stuff. We find out that Jacob is gay. He's not interested in sleeping with any of the women at the brothel, and he mentions that he's not killed anyone, which, and I did kind of like this moment because when he says he's never killed anyone, he's never taken a life, it kind of cuts to all the different women in all the different rooms who are with all the men kind of sort of turning sharply. It was kind of like, it's like they all heard that, like they all sensed that he said that. No?
No, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was an alright touch. But then of course,
I like again kind of I like stuff like that where it like makes them seem like a little more like animalistic, you know, like kind of like monsters, where it's like, yeah, like oh hey, we were starting to smell like fresh blood or something, you know.
There was a tease before this when they were sort of walking in one of the first places where we didn't realize it was witches necessarily at this point, but we see them crawling on the ceiling, like the burned,
cool.
The burned versions. Well, I thought that looked a little bit, you know, CG, so I was kind of not super into those. When they actually turned into their like grotesque versions in the brothel, though, I did like, because the sort of asshole character, what's his name, Dodd, who kind of becomes a bit more likable by the end because he sort of decides to like protect the kid. Because early on he's kind of like, oh, is he going to like turn on the kid kind of thing. He like has a thing with the prostitute where he's like, oh, you know, no, I'm not going to bathe, you know, Dodd likes it dirty. And there's a moment where he's distracted because one of the other guys, like, who's already seen like the witch turn, is trying to bang on the door, and when he turns back around to look at her, he freaks out because she's got the big nose and she's all burned and she's got this, you know, this sort of like scraggly grey hair, and she says, "What's the matter? Dodd likes it dirty." And I thought, okay, that was kind of funny. You know, it was kind of a grotesque, you know, humor, and it becomes this kind of big shootout where they're all kind of trying to like dive and like fight their way out of the brothel, and they're shooting the witches, blah blah blah. But they can't find the big brother. Duncan's just missing. And it kind of becomes this thing where they're wandering for a little bit, but the back half of the movie is basically them just hanging out in the church, because the church is the one place where the witches can't go. Which is a little odd to me that it's in their mystical town. Like, it's not like it's in the real world and it's like the real church necessarily, but I guess the rules still apply inside this Silent Hill-esque Old West town. But, you know, we have a lot of stuff where, like, the sort of father figure character that looked after them afterwards, Lester, his name is, you know, he's kind of the one who's really looking out for both the kids the whole time. He basically comes clean about his father, because Jacob's got this like idea that his father was this great like farmer, you know, he had cattle and he was unjustly killed, but the truth is that his father was a thief, as was his mother, and the people who came to the house to kill them, it wasn't some like super evil thing, it was retaliation because of what he'd done, what his father had done already. So there's a lot of character stuff that comes out in this section of the film. Honestly though, it does suffer from just sort of hanging around waiting in the church for a long time. There's a couple of moments where it kind of perks up a little bit, but this is kind of what I was saying earlier on about it's starting to feel kind of helpless, where one of the characters, Wiley, who's also kind of like mostly likable for the film, he's kind of the smart one who keeps a book and has all the information, he at one point randomly just starts eating glass, and they have to like, you know, pull it out of his hand, and he's got blood pouring from his mouth, and I thought this was quite effective because it was making me cringe. It was like, okay, this is notably horrific.
Yeah.
But he just says afterwards that he's so hungry, and you get the sense that no, this is like they're doing this to him. Somehow they're affecting him. And then eventually later on he starts like cutting himself and whatever else. He dies, Lester dies, and it ends up just being the Dodd and Jacob, and they're just going to fight their way out, and they're probably going to die, but they're basically at the point where like, well, let's go down swinging if nothing else. And I wanted to really like this moment with them teaming up and like Dodd seeming to actually give a shit about Jacob and sort of being there for him and saying, no, you run, I'll hold them off. Like, these moments feel it should have felt like a bigger deal. Like, there should have been more of an emotional impact because he was kind of the one who was against them early on, and not in a super dark way, just very kind of antagonistic, mildly antagonistic. He actually has maybe one of the most violent scenes of the movie. Actually, early on in the train heist, he sticks his spur in someone's mouth.
Oh yeah. Oof. Yeah.
And so I just like kicks his leg back, and it just it just slices one cheek off, and you can actually see the cheek sort of pulled apart. So that looked quite good. So
yeah,
I didn't have, I guess I didn't have the same negative feeling on the effects because I thought there was at least enough of them were good that I never came away from the movie thinking.
Well, I think it's about maybe like half and half because there is like good stuff like that, and you mentioned I forget that character's name, but the guy that like eats glass and then like cuts himself all up, like that looked like really good. But then there were other scenes where I don't know. I mean, maybe they were practical, but I think there was like sometimes like I think especially maybe like some of like the scenes on the train or something where someone would get shot and it kind of looked like fake CGI blood, and then like I remember that scene where like one of the like witches or whatever I think is pretending to be someone, and then she like changes into like a bunch of crows or ravens and like goes up into the sky. Like I thought that looked like super cheesy.
Well, that was definitely CG. You didn't do that practically.
Yeah, but it was like bad CG. Like no offense, but and then like
I have to say no offense. We're criticizing bad CG to.
Well, like again, like like sometimes it's like I don't know. You watch a movie and it's just like, ooh, like why did you think that was good? But then like sometimes there's a movie like this where it's like, all right, well I'm sure they're doing the best they can on the budget they have, but I mean still like, yeah, that didn't look good.
Yeah. That was it was one of them. It wasn't even one of them. It was meant to be Duncan to try and trick Jacob, but then as soon as he said, "No, you're not my brother. This is a trick," and immediately Dodd shoots him in the head, and it just bursts into like crows. And in fact, that's the other thing. Lester, when he dies. Oh no, is it Lester? I think it may be Wiley. One of them dies via crow birth, like a crow
that was cool.
out of their mouth. Yeah,
I did like that.
Honestly, a lot of the big moments are actually quite good. It just really needed tightening, and maybe the lead character needed to be a bit more interesting and engaging. And I think tightening up the pacing a little bit. It would have made for a. I think as it is, it's it's an okay movie, but you can sort of see there's enough good stuff in there that if they just tightened up these other things around it.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree with that because like the kind of like the bigger moments that we're talking about right now, I do think are all pretty cool. It's just the problem is it felt there was like such like big boring gaps, and I mean maybe they weren't even like that long, but to me they felt long because I don't know, it's not a super long movie, but it really dragged on for me as I was watching it.
I mean that's fair. We can't all aspire to work for Tim's impeccable taste. I mean, Tim's got a palate that's developed over decades.
Sure.
The taste has to be immaculate.
Hey, I mean, you like what you like, There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, coming from the person who likes Leprechaun and The Boy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go as low to make fun of someone's opinions. There's nothing wrong with liking a movie. It's not a crime.
If I had the energy, I would go back and like insert a supercut of every time you've insulted one of my movie opinions. How dare you try and take the high ground, you snivelling little co-host. Hear me? Sniveling.
Sniffling maybe.
Sniffling. Oh, don't catch any viruses, Tim. It's not the year for that.
Yeah.
It's not the year for that.
This is I mean the office we're recording is like Cat Central, so and then the cats are usually crawling around me. So I think I have a slight allergy to them because I always feel more stuffed up when we're recording.
Yeah, it could be the cats, could be me somehow. I don't know. Maybe I just make you more sniffly.
Sure. Yeah, that could be it.
All right, so you're a sniffling co-host, as we've established in the past minute. All right, this has been a productive episode of the show.
But I mean, I will say though, like you just mentioned, I do think the crow birth was actually pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big end of the movie is that they basically, the witches say to Jacob, "Look, we want to make a deal. We want you to willfully join us, and we'll give you something in return." And basically, what they give him in return is his brother. Like they've actually fixed up his brother. His brother walks out, confirms that it's him. They hug, and he's like, "Look, you let him go. You never go after him. You make sure he has a decent life." Because all throughout the movie, Jacob's been wanting to save up money to rebuy the farmhouse that his parents had, and Duncan's like, that's stupid. Don't forget that stuff. It's in the past. Blah blah blah. So the end of the movie here is that Jacob essentially gives Duncan this happy family life. Because we see at the end, the last scene of the movie is Duncan on the farm. He's got a wife with a baby, and
Now, did this feel familiar at all to you?
You know what? Nothing sprung to mind, but I've got a funny feeling that when you tell me what you're thinking, it's going to match.
I was like, wow, someone just pulled a Fantasy Island.
It never occurred to me. Well, because this was his fantasy? Is that what you're getting at?
I mean, spoilers alert for if you haven't watched Fantasy Island, but that also ends with one brother having to stay in this mystical place so that his other brother can survive.
Oh, that part, Tim. The fact that you think I'm going to remember important plot details of Fantasy Island tells me everything I need to know about your credentials. Quite frankly.
Hey, I didn't like Fantasy Island. I'm just saying that this movie clearly ripped it off.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they wrote and produced and shot this movie since February during the quarantine. Yes, I'm sure all that happened since that movie came out. I'll tell you this, I was not expecting Fantasy Island to be the movie you were about to bring up.
And obviously joking, but it is funny because the similarities stick out to me.
Yeah, how dare you bring up a Jeff Wardlaw movie? How dare you bring a Jeff Wardlaw Lucy Hale combo movie up on this show?
Hey, well,
all obligations we had to talk about that movie ended at the end of that episode. We never have to mention that stupid movie ever again.
Unless I don't know, patrons vote for it somehow.
There's no readers. There's no readers in podcasting.
But maybe they want to watch it on a stream.
No. I veto all. I have that power. Okay? Alright?
Okay. All right.
On this podcast, I'm head witch.
Okay.
I don't know what witch that makes you, but that's what we'll go with.
The HWIC, head witch in charge.
Yes. What is this? What is this devolved into? No, I think the movie's okay. I think it's perfectly watchable. I don't think you're going to be mad. I mean, I think the average rating on IMDb right now is a 3.6, which I think is a bit harsh. For me, this is if we're getting to the ratings, which I think we more or less are. I think this is a 5.5. I don't think it's quite good, but I think there's enough things in there that I can see what they're trying to do. There's attempts to try and make likable characters, which I think for the most part kind of succeeds. I mean, they're not amazing characters, but I don't dislike most of them. And then, it's got a couple of good sort of horror moments. Whether it's the pigeon or the glass or the spur and the spur and the face isn't really a horror moment, but it's gory enough that it feels like a horror moment.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely gonna go lower. I think I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give it a 4. I think For me, it's not horrible. It's not the worst thing in the world. There are a few like good parts to it, but yeah, it's just dragged down to me by yeah, just like a lot of dullness, a lot of boringness. I kind of get like the drama that they're going for, but I don't know, kind of a lot of it came off like kind of eye rolly to me, like the whole like big brother little brother thing. Like I don't know, I thought that was just kind of cheesy. Like it also kind of
Yeah.
kept making me think of Arrested Development.
It was kind of weird actually, because when Duncan comes out at the end, Jacob's like, "Hey, big brother." And he doesn't respond at first, and he turns around and says, "See, that's not my brother. You're trying to trick me again." And then Duncan goes, "Hey, little brother." And I'm like, "Wait, do you really think it's that hard to figure out that the response he's expecting when he says, 'Hey, big brother,' is 'Hey, little brother'? I mean, that's not that hard to fake."
I said the same thing. I was like, "Oh yeah, hey, who could have ever cracked that code?" Like,
Oh dear.
but yeah, I mean, I mean, I guess probably like I sound pretty harsh, but I mean, honestly, we've definitely seen a lot worse. It's like not like egregiously bad. It's like if it's streaming or whatever, fine, give it a watch. I mean, it's like on VOD now, but if it's on like Netflix or actually one thing that kind of pissed me off is like I had to pay for this movie, and then like one of the first things that comes up is like they're going through the logos and stuff, and it's like Shudder.
I know.
I'm like, wait a minute, there's a Shudder movie. Like, what if we just waited 2 weeks? Would have been I will just watch it on Shudder for free. I mean, obviously I pay for Shudder, but you know what I mean. So
No, he
so I
doesn't.
wasn't.
Tim's got a deal with a cable guy. He's got him hooked up to an extra pipeline or something. I don't know.
Hey, can you give me a Shudder for free? Like, is it on cable? No. But yeah, I forget where I was going with it. Oh yeah, I mean, there's like some cool stuff, but there's also some dumb bad stuff. I think. So yeah, like for me, it's not like egregiously bad or horrible, but it is below like the halfway point of like just being like fine or okay for me. So 4 is my score. 4 score. And 7 movies ago, we watched The Boy.
Oh boy. Mm.
What if the third Boy movie, they travel to the Old West?
Tim, there isn't going to be a third Boy movie. Give up that dream right now.
Oh yeah, like you said, there's never going to be a second Boy movie.
Did I say that? I don't recall saying that.
You probably hoped for it.
Oh, hoping is not the same as predicting, Tim. I hope for a lot of things.
Okay.
Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. Right?
Sure.
Look. Don't you sit there and try to I don't know, gaslight me? Is that what's happening here? I don't know what's happening here.
Catfish.
Catfishing me?
Sure.
Oh dear. All right. I think we'll probably wrap it up there. If you made it this far in the review, put the words "little brother" in the comments on YouTube. You also hit the like button. Like, it's super important. It helps us find more people. I'm going to make Tim post for the thumbnail. So here we go. If Tim can just lean back a little touch so his head's not cut off at the top. All right. 3, 2, 1, pose. Am I supposed to Photoshop a hat in?
Yeah. Put a cowboy hat on me.
If Tim was committed, he'd have gotten a prop hat just for the occasion.
I probably have some somewhere.
Do I have a cowboy hat just lying around somewhere?
Somewhere. I don't feel like getting it out. I could go through my chest of props.
Somewhere up his ass.
You done? You feel better?
There's no shame in joking, Tim. No shame. All right,
you leave my ass out of this.
I will never leave your ass out of this. Your ass is a primary feature of this podcast.
Oh my goodness.
It's basically the third host. It's Peter, Tim, and Tim's ass.
Okay, if you say so.
All right, that's been the Pale Dorage Screams After Midnight. Hopefully you've enjoyed our rants and rambles of the movie. Of course, you can let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments. You can get us on Patreon, as we mentioned earlier, patreon.com/MailFestTV for support and all that stuff. Everything was just said, though, liking, commenting, all of it does help. We can get us on Twitter @StreamsMidnight for updates and Tim posting teases and stupid jokes and whatever else Tim does. Basically, I'm not even sure if we should let him have access to a Twitter account, never mind the official Streams After Midnight Twitter account, but chaos reigns. People seem to like it, so I'll let it pass. So that is us, though. So thank you very much for watching or listening, and the Octoberthon is coming up. Look forward to lots of extra episodes throughout the month of October. But it has been a pleasure to serve you today, kind ladies and gentlemen, and witches, and warlocks, and spiny heady looking creatures. And that last one was a reference to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We'll see you next time, guys. Keep watching scary movies. Goodbye.